I want to apologize. I want to deeply, deeply apologize. I made a big mistake. Um, Throughout my uh, adult life, um, I managed to never vote for either a Republican or a Democrat president. And the one time I finally say, you know what? I'm going to vote for a major party because I felt like, you know, like we couldn't have another term like Biden again. Um, I voted for Trump, and I'm sorry. I apologize. I'm really sorry for voting for him, but even more so, I'm sorry to myself. You know, like I'm sorry to all the people that he has hurt and killed and maimed through this war in Iran and supporting Israel's genocide in Palestine. I'm very sorry to all those people, those innocent people. But I'm even more so sorry to myself for abandoning the principles and abandoning the knowledge that I picked up throughout my adult life that, you know, it doesn't matter if you vote Democrat or Republican. It's a uniparty. They are two sides of the same coin. And Donald Trump tricked me. He actually fooled me. And I don't think of myself as somebody that's easily fooled. Um, since 2003, I've been the conspiracy guy. I've looked into a whole bunch of conspiracies, all the conspiracies, except one that really I was blindsided to because of the Holocaust and, you know, the victimhood that Israel and Jews represent, that they've shoved down our throats, this propaganda, this victimhood since World War II. It blindsided me because I never took it seriously. Like when people on the right would say like, "Oh, it's the fucking Jews," um, you know, I never really put much credence into that. I was like, "Oh, it's just some whack. These are the whack job conspiracy theorists." Like, you know, like I thought I had a more sophisticated understanding of what was going on, but no, actually, I was wrong. And Israel has a big part, and this brand of Judaism that's being pushed today, which is apparently much different from the Judaism of like 400, 500 years ago. Um, you know, a lot of it's apparently been co-opted by followers of King Solomon, paganists, Satanists, people who worship these deities like Moloch and Baal and Baphomet and Remphan. The Star of David is the Star of Remphan. It's a demon. Has nothing to do with David. Um, Most Jews today have little to no Semitic blood in them. A lot of them come from Eastern Europe and other parts of the world. Judaism today has become an amalgamation of the most evil, selfish, self entitled, nasty people on the planet. Okay? These are the orcs in Lord of the Rings. You know? Um, these are the goblins, these are the vampires that we hear about in mythology. They like to feed on humanity quite literally, like Peter Nygard, who, if you look into him and what he does with babies he brings into this world, um, and if you think back to the legends of Kronos and what Kronos did with his offspring, um, it's a Saturn cult. And I was just watching this video where this guy was talking about how Saturn's rings are, they used to be moons, and they're all crushed moons basically circling Saturn, and Saturn is slowly consuming all these moons. So that's a great metaphor for what's going on. These are parasites, especially at the very top. And with Judaism as a whole, I feel like this philosophy of parasitism like completely took over that religion. So it's, I have a lot more research to do as far as what early Judaism was like, and early Christianity as well. But what we see now is a death cult, and they want to bring the end of the world. And Trump is apparently a vessel that they're using to bring about the end of the world. Through the Epstein files, blackmailing him and most of Congress, paying off most of Congress through AIPAC and other means. Our government, our leadership is largely bought and paid for, which is why Israel can so openly make us their bitch. Why, they've got Trump pushing in the chair for Bibi, holding the phone for Bibi, letting Bibi do whatever he wants with the Middle East, and we're sending them money, sending them weapons. We are, and our tax dollars are funding all this shit. And I didn't vote for this shit. I voted for the opposite. Trump promised no more wars, no forever wars. He even brought on Tulsi Gabbard, who for much of her political career rallied against the forever wars. And I got tricked. I got fooled. I really believed that he was against the system. This guy who hung out with Epstein, hung out with the Clintons, was a Democrat for most of his life, who did all these shady casino deals. And, how do you even let a casino go bankrupt? Like, there has to be some shade. Like, the house always wins. How do you even manage that? Like, but this guy, he tricked me. And now when we look back at these assassination attempts, there was another one most recently, and you can really see the emperor has no clothes. Like it's the illusion is wearing very thin. So now I believe these assassination attempts were faked. All three of the perpetrators were in media in some form or fashion, BlackRock commercials and other things like this. Like, are they just actors? Is it all a show? Over this past year plus, it's felt like it's been all a show. As somebody who has watched a lot of wrestling in his youth, during some of the best eras, the Attitude Era, and in the Attitude Era, it was what made it so good was that they were able to mix reality with the script, and so it became kind of like more. It became a little bit more believable, less like, wink, wink. Like, you'd have like Stone Cold beating up Vince McMahon in the hospital and stuff, and all this crazy stuff. And of course, you don't. If you're smart enough, you're not assuming it's real or anything, but it looks real enough that it's more entertaining than, say, like Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant in 1980s. You know what I'm saying? Like the promos and the storylines, everything peaked in the Attitude Era, and Trump actually participated in that. He was, he was friends with Vince McMahon and was, he showed up in cameos in the storylines and even had like a little feud with Vince McMahon. And I think that's where he learned how to, cut yourself to make yourself bleed. That's from wrestling. So with the Butler assassination attempt, that's what it really looks like what happened, is that he fell to the floor immediately and he had like a little razor or something, was able to cut his ear. Not only that, but it looks like that's some kind of ritual having to do with slaves wanting to remain slaves. They have to pierce their ears, some Jewish shit, I don't know what the fuck, or some pagan stuff, I forget. But some kind of ritual, I guess a pagan ritual. So those things kind of line up. Yeah, a guy died, but you know how many people died on 9/11? And we see how staged 9/11 was. One guy, they'll easily sacrifice. The elites, they sacrifice people all the time. Look at World War I, World War II. Millions and millions of people sacrificed. The people at the top, they don't give a shit about us. They really don't. And I never assumed they did. Like, even when I was still kind of, tricked, thinking that Trump might go against the system, I was thinking he was going to go against the system for his own personal gain, because they were attacking him, and naturally you want to fight back and, not get locked out of your bank and all this stuff that the Trump family had to deal with, apparently, which is why they went into crypto. But it seems like that was all staged, like it was a manufactured conflict so that they could come up with the solution. The solution is the digital dystopia that they're building, that Trump is helping to build by removing regulations for all these AI companies, and doing so much business with them, giving them so much power, giving Palantir so much power to surveil us. And completely going around the Constitution by making these public-private partnerships and having the private companies do all the dirty work. And now with flock cameras and, the Wi-Fi technology, even with the Wi-Fi technology in your house, they can pinpoint exactly where you are in your house just using the waves that bounce off of you and stuff. And it's going to come to the point where they're going to want to put a chip in your brain if you want to get your UBI or some shit. They're really pushing hard on this universal basic income. Elon Musk is talking about universal high income. These are unrealistic things. The people in power would never allow for us to be prosperous and wealthy and healthy, because then they can be overcome. They can be taken over. They don't want to give us power. They want to take away all our power, and they want us living like slaves, like in medieval times, the feudal system. And this time, instead of kings and queens, we have tech oligarchs and Satanists and paganists. It's not looking too great, And we thought it was bad enough having cell phones and tablets with microphones and TVs with microphones and cameras and all this other stuff. But no, it's becoming even more comprehensive, even more ubiquitous. to where like you can't really escape it, even if you don't carry a cell phone or something and you're super careful. It's becoming impossible to remain, to have like a private life. And like they're just setting it all up, and soon we're gonna see drones everywhere too. That's the next step. We kind of it's kind of getting eased in with the flock cameras. Oh, you got a camera here, camera there. It's like on every fucking corner now. Well, they can't look in your backyard, right? Well, they can send a drone to look in your backyard and look through your window and look here, look there. Use all kind of technology to scan and model the environment. And they're going to try to model your behavior too. They're going to track all your behavior. And, that Minority Report kind of dystopic viewpoint could come to fruition as well. Basically, all the dystopic sci-fi movies you've seen is predictive programming for what is being built. Like that is what is being built, and that's the world we're going into right now. And you got to wonder where is the breaking point? When is the breaking point? When will people say, you know what, enough is enough? Because we keep falling into this trap of like, oh well, like the Republicans are so bad, let me vote Democrat. Oh, the Democrats are so bad, let me vote Republican. And it's sometimes hard to find a person who can say, yeah, they're both horrible. Like Biden was horrible, Trump is horrible, Kamala would have been horrible. We got to expect more from these people. It's just obvious that the people that end up in power are completely blackmailed, they're completely controlled. Biden, you could clearly see out of all of them. I mean, you see Trump with some mental issues as well now, but Biden was really out of it. And we now know that many of the things he signed was signed with an auto pen. And the situation with Trump isn't much different, like he's falling asleep in places. He's going on these dementia-fueled rants as well and can't seem to control himself. These people are demonic. They're possessed. Possessed by demons or possessed by greed. And, like at the end of the day, there's a fine line between those things, and it just seems like everybody in power is doing everything they can to collapse civilization, to bring about a more authoritarian world, the world of 1984 of perpetual wars and that don't really mean anything. And, it's just a continuous stalemate just to keep people in check, to keep people in a constant state of emergency to where you can't do anything. And then the rich, the elite, they get to live in their own little enclaves, isolated from the rest of the world. I mean, think about those Silicon Valley tech bros. They got homeless and crackheads all over the place, and then they just lock themselves away in their neighborhood behind their locked gates. Miami's another good example of this. You got people like Patrick Bet-David. He got his own little like mini island or some shit. Like, these people, they get their own little fucking, you got to cross a bridge to even get to their neighborhood and stuff. And then the even richer billionaires, they have their own actual islands, like in the Caribbean, and that's where they traffic people, and they're eating flesh and sacrifices and all this other stuff that we, most people think like, oh, that stuff, no one's really like that anymore. That's like, you're thinking of like the Mayan Empire or something. Like, no, this has happened throughout history. There's a small percentage of the human population that constantly gets into this kind of stuff. And it's debatable whether they have some real connection to like otherworldly beings or whatever. That part doesn't really matter much to me. It's the fact that they believe this shit and they're acting on it and they control the world. So what are we going to do as a people? Like what's going to happen to humanity? I think it's really important now to really research things on your own and to be aware of history, especially religious history. Like we've kind of been pushed into a more secular society, so we've kind of like ignored religion as a whole, like my generation and younger generations, maybe Gen X too. Like we've kind of moved away from religion, and like I'm not a big fan of religion, like the church and stuff like that. I'm not a big fan of that. About people, humans, telling you what is righteous and stuff. But I think there is merit in researching the history, reading the Bible, reading the Quran, reading the Torah, reading these religious texts, and then understanding the history. Like, how did they come up to this? What did they, what is being interpreted in a different way? I mean, just the Bible itself, there's different editions of the Bible. And if you get an old copy from like the 1700s, it's going to be different from whatever you just bought off the shelf. So, history gets changed over time. Religious texts get changed over time. And there's different interpretations that lead you into different ways. I've been learning a lot more about Gnostic Christianity, and these were actually the early Christians, and the stuff that they were believing is much different to what is being taught now. And I think it's important to go back and check out the banned books, the books they banned out of the Bible, like the Book of Enoch, which I myself haven't gotten into, but I've heard a lot of people talking about it, and it's interesting. It's very interesting. But what I've done is I've started to read the Bible again. As somebody who went to Catholic school, for years, like over a decade of Catholic school teaching, in elementary, middle school, high school, just about a decade. We studied the Bible, but there's much more to learn if you open your mind and you just like step outside the mainstream view of things, because that's how you get muddled into these different interpretations, like this Judeo-Christian mindset that kind of is trying to brainwash Christians into believing the Jews bullshit, that they're the chosen people, et cetera, and and that's how you got people like Mike Huckabee, shilling for Israel all the time, and you got Pete Hegseth wanting to push this war in Iran so that Israel can have their greater Israel project, so they can take over the Middle East. It's really sick. It's really sick, and it's really crazy how far this country has fallen, and it makes you wonder, where are the adults in the room? Like, where are the people who, there's got to be some more qualified people that understand these things that we do, right? Where are they? What are they doing? Like, how deep is this control that anybody who has the capability of challenging them is removed? Like you see with the scientists that have been disappearing lately, like, what did they know? Were they about to reveal something? Like, what was that about? What is that about? So yeah, my advice is, this is basically a spiritual war that is happening right now. And I hate to like try to simplify things like this, but it is like good versus evil. It's these themes throughout fiction and history and stuff, like it's real. There is real evil in the world, and there is real good in the world. And I think it's important to challenge evil and not to succumb to it. Um, we all do things that can be described as evil or not good. We could all be better people, and I really feel like we need to understand what forces are at play. We need to take some of this religious stuff a bit more seriously. Even if you don't believe, a lot of people do, and you know the Bible, whether you take it, it is I see it as metaphors, but metaphors for what? What is it really telling you? And that's something that you have to research for yourself and look into, not just the mainline Bible, but try to find like the Septuagint, the oldest writing, the oldest editions of the Old Testament. Look for the oldest writings of the New Testament. Um, Look into the banned books of the Bible. Um, we gotta really build our knowledge base to understand what's going on, because we live in a world of deception. Um, I did some deep dive on YouTube in this concept of Satan's little season. It's the idea that Jesus returned um, earlier in this timeline, and he had his 1,000-year reign already. And then, in Revelations, it says like after that reign, Satan has like a certain moment in time, a certain period in time. They're not specific about it, but a certain period of time they describe as a little season where Satan runs the world. Satan rules the world. Gnostic teachings say that our reality was created by the demiurge, which is basically Satan. Um, a part of God that separated and, became deluded and wanted to basically have control over his own world. And that theory kind of rings true. There's so much illusion, so much deception in the world, so much suffering, so much death. And you got to wonder, is this Satan's little season? I mean, the people that run the world, they believe in demons and Satan. And, think about CERN, the Large Hadron Collider. They're trying to open up portals to other worlds. They're trying to bring demons into this world. So I'm not sure what else to say about this, right now. I just wanted to get some things off my chest and really apologize for being fooled, for being tricked. I thought that, voting Trump would keep us out of these wars. I was really nervous about the war between Ukraine and Russia, which is still going on. Um, and, I really felt like if Kamala was elected, that, they would keep supporting Ukraine and we'd end up in like a World War III scenario. But now look, we're in World War III, basically. Because Iran has the support of Russia and China, and if the U.S. and Israel pushes too far, it could get really nasty really quickly. I was really hoping that we could go back to being a successful country. Our economy could be saved. That was the main things I voted for. I didn't want any more war, and I wanted our economy to be saved. Bonus reason, Trump was pro-crypto, but he ended up being the worst thing for crypto. He extracted so much money with his meme coins. and slow walking, all these promises. He said he was going to start a Bitcoin reserve. He said he was going to establish laws that regulate crypto to make it legitimate. And, he's not for freedom. He's not for decentralization. He's just for, just like everybody else, trying to just make sure that his pockets are full and doesn't really give a fuck if anybody else has to die for it. And this is the world that we're in, and they're building more and more power. They're building more and more power where they can, kill you, disappear you, and then Meta will recreate your Facebook profile or put AI in charge of your Facebook profile, and you're going to see people disappearing and still posting online like they never left. And that's fucking genius. Because then you can fucking just work in the shadows and fucking take out whoever the fuck you want. Like, there's so many things like that are being built around us to keep us completely locked in. And I really hope humanity as a whole doesn't wait for armies of humanoid robots and drones everywhere before doing anything about it. Because that's what's coming very soon. If you look at China, their humanoid robots are so advanced, they're doing like kung fu and shit. That's going to be coming. And so we got to understand, how can we counter this shit? How can we, get laws passed to lock that shit down? We need to figure out what technology can be used against these things. Like EMPs, like hacking, like all this stuff. These are more and more skills that we're going to need just to be able to survive. Humanity is going to have to make a massive shift in our day-to-day lives. Just like when the Industrial Revolution, it changed so many things. We went from agriculture to working in factories. Now the factories are gone in America. And, people get by on, working for healthcare or food service, or, girl boss jobs that are going to get replaced by AIs, gig economy, and gambling. That's what we are now. No one's really making shit anymore. People are losing their jobs, and wages aren't going up. And at some point, the population will reach a breaking point. And that's also part of their plan too. Because guess what? With civil unrest, with the collapse of society, the everyday person will be begging for a strong man to take control and fix things. That's basically how Trump got elected, because he showed himself to be somebody, or he, kind of presented himself as somebody who was going to rally against the system, who was going to, fight the Fed, who was going to fight, these international groups like the WHO and all this. But if you really think about it, he's still proud of Operation Warp Speed. He's still proud of, ramming those, pushing those death jabs to people in this country that killed and injured so many people. And he's even actually said he's not Christian. His daughter converted to Judaism, Ivanka. And Kushner has been one of the main people that has been pushing pro-Zionist policies within the administration. And, Kanye said that Kushner was Trump's handler, and he probably is, and Trump, he's benefiting a lot, but he could also be getting blackmailed. You never know. I feel like his kind of candid remarks about like Miriam Adelson and stuff, like he's kind of like in the back of his mind, he doesn't like it too much, and he's kind of just like, that's his, that could be his way of showing some little bit of resistance, but he's completely cucked. He's completely controlled. He can't. Doesn't seem like he can really do anything. Like he's just receiving his marching orders. Um, you got Kushner managing him, and Ivanka and his grandkids. He's got to think about his grandkids and everything, and but there's no honor in any of this. He's just damning his entire bloodline, but that's okay. It is what it is. We kind of just need to do what we can do to stay informed and to prepare for the worst. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. I would advise, if you have any kind of sway or political power, like, maybe you should probably step up and do something about this. Like, maybe, like there's not much I personally can do. I can't even get this account up to 200 subscribers. You want me to do something about it? I'm just trying to survive. And that's what most people are doing. They're just trying to survive. They, like, hey, you got kids, you got a mortgage. It's like, man, I'm just trying to make it to the next month. And that's the reality. Like my credit is all fucking maxed out. I ain't got no more credit. Struggling to find work. My crypto investments haven't all played out yet. Like, and who knows if we'll see a mania like we did in 2021 with NFTs. I don't know. Like, who knows, man? Like, you just got to be grateful that you woke up this morning and that you get to play another round of life. Just keep finding reasons to keep pushing on, because it's so easy to find a reason to not. There's a lot that this life still has to offer that can still give you great moments and great feelings, and you just gotta try your best. Try your best. If you feel like you're not trying your best, then that's the problem right there. But if you're doing everything you can do, then what else can you do? You're limited in your time, your energy, your physical body. We just gotta do what we can do.